This is going to come as a shock to some of you, but it's best that you hear it from me. People lie. All people lie at one time or another. You have lied. The person sitting next to you has lied, and you have been lied to. It's part of the developmental process. Even when we grow up, some people lie a lot of the time. This is the truth. We lie. Dr. Paul Ekman is a psychologist who studies emotions and facial expressions. His research shows that there are 9 motives that we have for lying. See which ones you recognize. We lie to avoid being punished, to obtain a reward, for example, on a resume. You might lie on a resume to get a job, to protect another person from being punished, to protect yourself from physical harm, to win the admiration of others, to get out of an awkward social situation, to avoid, oh, I heard that. To avoid embarrassment, to maintain privacy, to exercise power over others by controlling information. Plenty of good reasons we might have to lie. In my early adulthood, I was a habitual liar. Something got stuck in my development when my active alcoholism bloomed. I was forever trying to put out fires resulting from my own bad behavior. And I would tell you what you wanted to hear from me rather than what would get me in trouble. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why that was a problem. Why wouldn't I tell you what you wanted to hear from me rather than what would get me in trouble? It took a long time in my own emotional development to get that piece right. And that's something that addiction does to us. Addiction is, in part, about numbing our senses, about blunting our experience of the world, so we won't have to feel the pain of being in trouble or feel the pain of abuse or feel the pain of our past. Addiction is a lot about staying numb. My Path to Sobriety, which is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, teaches us to strive for rigorous honesty. And in a very real way, that striving for rigorous honesty has helped me to regrow my sense of integrity. Our theme this month is integrity, a state of being whole, entire, undiminished. It's related to integral. What is integrated? To be a part of something bigger. This was the way that I found myself into Unitarian Universalism. Through Alcoholics Anonymous is the way I found Unitarian Universalism, because I wanted to answer the question that is implied in the 12 steps: how do I understand God? I wanted to make an A in AA, and so I asked around at meetings, I still do this today, how do you think of so-and-so? How do you understand God? And there was a woman that she was a sober sister, still is a sober sister, a good friend, a practicing Unitarian Universalist, and I said, do you know anything about a good liberal church? I knew what God was not. Wasn't going to be the God that I grew up with. And she suggested that I try out First Universalist Church over on DuPont. Shout out to First Universalist Church. And there I had what I consider to be a Unitarian Universalist conversion moment, when I heard from the pulpit language that I didn't have to do mental gymnastics to make fit into my own life. I could barely barely accept myself in the broken state that I was in. I could barely see a future out of my own despair. And yet here was a community that invited me in with my full self. In a very real way, that community saved my life. And because I was in need of community and in deep need of integrity, I was thirsty for the love that I found there. With the help of a sponsor, with the help of the congregation, a congregation that was more concerned with how we treat each other than what we say we believe. That's what we do here in covenantal community. We live by a covenant. How we treat each other is more important than what we might say we believe. I was able, little bit by little bit, to believe that my life could get better, and I learned to tell the truth. Learning to tell the truth, to recognize the truth and to separate it from lies is a lifelong process, and there is no shortage of material to work with. In our own lives and in our civic life especially. To be educated in the United States is to be educated in lies. I'm going to say that again. To be educated in the United States is to be educated in lies. Lies and deception about the founding of our nation. Lies and deception that only later do I learn that we are built on genocide and enslavement and Holocaust. Lies about how we treat our citizens and our fellow human beings on this planet. Lies about our exceptionalism, as if it's a football game. Lies about the possibility of infinite growth on a finite planet. Man alive, I just swallowed those lies because they came from good authority, people who meant well, who taught me well, who had been taught those lies themselves. And I'm just as mad as hell to find out that it's a lie. There are lots of different kinds of lies. We are subject to a lot of them, and some of these you know. There's gaslighting, a manipulation tactic that's used to gain power, telling blatant lies and denying that it's ever been said. You've probably heard of gaslighting. It comes from a play and a movie where the protagonist turns, the antagonist, I guess, continues to turn down the lanterns in such a way as to make his wife think that she's going crazy, telling lies. One of my favorite quotes about lies and truth comes from Stephen Colbert, the great satirist Stephen Colbert. And he coined the term truthiness. Truthiness in 2005. Gosh, that's 15 years ago now. Whoosh. What he said later about, he did this on the Colbert Report before he had the Late Show, and here's what he said about the word truthiness. It's not truth, but something that seems like truth, the truth we want to exist. Truthiness is what I say is right, and nothing anyone else says is possibly true. It's not only that I feel it to be true, but that I feel it to be true. There's not only an emotional quality, there's a selfish quality to it. Do you see that? Not only do I feel it to be true, but it is my truth, right? That's the truthiness. We see this in lots of places in lots of ways. We hear things that people would like to say are true. It protects them. It protects power. It holds on to power in some way. Stephen Gross is he's a psychoanalyst who wrote this in the Financial Times about the real reason that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, lies, the real reason that this human being lies, is to stay in our heads. This is the power. Why would you say 16,000 lies over the course of 3 years of this presidency? 16,000 demonstrably false or misleading statements, easily proven. Why would you do that? Well, Gross says outrage at his duplicitousness is a dangerous pleasure. My outrage at that level of lying is a dangerous pleasure, what Philip Roth calls the ecstasy of sanctimony. Isn't that good? I have that ecstasy of sanctimony. It's comforting that journalists are fact-checking the current occupant, but it may not matter at all. Gross says, if my analysis is correct, outrage and fact-checking will not stop this dishonesty. They may even help Trump get what he wants, which is forever to be in our minds. Reported to be a man who lacks the emotional and psychological architecture a person needs to build deep relationships with people. The current occupant may abuse the truth so that we take notice of him, think about him, become emotionally involved with him. A psychic imperialist, he aims to colonize our minds. Whew. So what I learned in the lie of my education was that the colonists were doing a good thing, that was pretty good, but it didn't talk about the displaced. My education didn't talk about who was displaced. And if this person wants to colonize my mind, what is displaced? Peace, wisdom, integrity, calm, hope, belief that something can be better. There's a wall that needs to be built, but I believe it's in my mind. Here's another shocker. Lying is bad for us. Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote, "A deception of others is nearly always rooted in a deception of ourselves. When I participate in a lie, when I participate in the lie of my education and continue to share that without examining it, it is deceiving myself." We've been lied to. Many of us are come-outers from other religions, and we have been lied to about sexuality, that there's only one way to be a man or only one way to be a woman, and by the way, there's only two things to be, a man or a woman. We've been lied to about that. And some people are bravely fighting to become who they are, who they truly know themselves to be. I think you young people here in this room have a big step up on those of us who are my age. I know my daughter at 17 is learning to live with people around her all the time in a world of gender fluidity. How much easier, how much more honest, how much more integrity is there in that than having to break out of the difficulty of having to break out of the binary. Lying is bad for congregations and communities. It's bad for our society. You know that recently a confidential trove of government documents was obtained by the Washington Post that reveals that the U.S. officials failed to tell the truth about the war in Afghanistan throughout an 18-year campaign. making rosy pronouncements that they knew to be false, and hiding evidence that the war had become unwinnable. It's everywhere. We hear this everywhere and all the time. I'll just lift up two stories of ways that truth is being told now in a way that really matters. Our movies and conversation group went on Friday to see Just Mercy. Who all has seen this movie, Just Mercy? Get thee to the theater and see this film. It's really brilliant. In the movie, based on a true story, Walter Johnny D. McMillan was convicted of murder in a trial that lasted just a day and a half. And the prosecutors ignored several black witnesses who placed Mr. McMillan 11 miles away from the crime. There's a kind of truthiness to the verdict if you were a white resident of Monroeville, Alabama, ironically the setting of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. The truthiness of wanting someone to pay for a horrific crime, that it was solved, that order was restored. I happen to watch police procedurals, hour-long TV shows. I'm currently watching Brenda Lee Johnson in The Closer. It's handy that the real bad guys get caught, that there is a medical examiner who gives the right information, and it's all wrapped up in an hour, right? But in real life, this truthiness is the biggest lie. The real killer in that case in Alabama has never been found. Somebody got away with murder, but as long as one person had been captured and put on death row, check, it was all good. But it wasn't, of course, because a community was destroyed. Ultimately, our lying is bad for the planet. The climate crisis, as Naomi Oreskes writes, she says that scientists working on the issue have often told me that once upon a time they assumed if they did their jobs, politicians would act upon the information. Right? If they just did their jobs and told the truth, that politicians would act on the information. Well, it hasn't happened, of course. Worse yet, science has failed to have the necessary impact in significant part because of disinformation promoted by the major fossil fuel companies. The website Exxon New states that for 30 years they've known, and not only have we had to overcome the misinformation, but we've missed a generation's worth of time to fix it. Misinformation, disinformation. We have been systematically misled. So no wonder we don't trust institutions, right? No wonder we don't trust the government. No wonder we don't trust big institutions. Telling the truth is hard. And sometimes we lose our nerve, especially when the forces arrayed against us are huge, ginormous corporations, or the entire educational system, or the entire government, or the president, for God's sake. People that we should be able to trust, we cannot trust. Lying is their stock in trade. And will it matter if we tell the truth? To ourselves? To each other? Will it matter? Yes. That's the truth. It will matter. It will matter to us. It will matter to the people that we love. It will matter to the people to whom we're responsible. The quote at the top of the order of service today is by Howard Thurman, an American Baptist and theologian and scholar, and it says, "Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve." It is hard to be in the face of despair. Despair for the planet, despair for our children, despair. Despair for all the ways that white supremacy culture has corrupted the whole damn system. Thurman was a theist, and the totality of that quote says, "In the quietness of this place in his heart, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of God, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather or foul, in good times or in tempest," God, we're in the tempest, "in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed." That's the integrity that I sought when I walked through this door. That's the integrity that I believe we all seek in showing up on Sunday morning when there's other things that we could be doing. That's the integrity that we practice at the ballot box. That's the integrity that we practice when we sign a postcard. That's the integrity that we practice when we say, I can't be numb anymore to the climate crisis. That's the integrity that we practice when we show up for each other in our caring communities, when we bring a meal, when we greet someone who is feeling lost, who comes here to have their life saved. Let us not stop telling the truth. Let us not tell our children that everything is okay, and that knowing that it's not okay is okay. Tell them that pretending that what is unacceptable is fine, is what got us into this sick and dysfunctional spot. Apologize for any prior attempts to teach them deniability. I want to teach you that I was blinded by my desire for a comfortable numbness, but my integrity won't let me do that anymore. May we err on the side of the oppressed, and may kindness blended with rigorous honesty lead us, even when it's difficult, to ever more integrity.
Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.